Behold, the Gurkhata augment Wild Frenzy. Like almost all weapon augments, you can install this only on direct variants of the weapon, not dual variants or versions in different weapon categories. So it'll go on the Prisma Gurkhata, but not on the Twin Gurkhatas. Wild Frenzy adds a second firing mode to your Gurkhata that sets your fire rate much higher, holds and locks your trigger, and forces hip fire until your magazine is empty or something else stops you from shooting more. If you get 2 or more kills during one such spray, your next reload won't cost any ammo. To clarify, you do still need to reload. The bullets don't go directly into your magazine. There are a lot of little notes with Wild Frenzy that mostly end up mattering, so I'll fly through the rest and we can discuss. Let's see, the alt-fire isn't affected by other sources of fire rate, negative or positive. I guess that could matter if you had a negative fire rate Riven. Damage over time effects from status procs inflicted while using the alt-fire don't seem to count as kills for the ammo refund, so maybe that makes 100 munitions less good here. And finally, the stats of the alt-fire are otherwise the same as the normal auto-trigger, which might sound obvious, but keep in mind that the recoil stays the same. There's rather a lot of it. And with that, we've arrived at the question posed by Wild Frenzy. Is all this fire rate really a good thing on this type of weapon? Between the increased DPS from the fire rate, the incidental recoil increase, and the increased speed at which you're burning ammo, and then the ammo refund, that would be enough to chew on. But for Wild Frenzy, there's another issue, at least at the time of this recording. You can't get a second copy, and you can't downrank a mod once you've ranked it up. This matters because unranked, Wild Frenzy gives only half as much fire rate, 200%, which is still a ton, but it's dramatically more manageable than 400% for a lot of use cases. And I also think that it's the more manageable for just using the weapon very straightforwardly with this augment. So if you just have a normal build and you put Wild Frenzy in, I feel like having it unranked is generally going to be a lot better than having it fully ranked. But with all of that on the table, let's dissect, and I'll talk about why I think that. Regardless of mod rank, your magazine of bullets still contains the same amount of damage. So mod rank determines how much time you have to point that damage at 2 or more enemies and get the refund, or just do damage. So even unranked at 200% fire rate, Wild Frenzy still gives you a ton of fire rate. That the identity of the mod doesn't really change. You can't just have it unranked and then it doesn't really give you fire rate, but you still get the refund, and you could just use it like a normal Gurkhata. But still, 200% fire rate, that's still twice as much time as the 400% fully ranked copy to aim those bullets at your enemies. So that does help. It's still beneficial, and it's still worth discussing that you may want to keep it at 200% for some use cases. I also want to note that the Gurkhata is already a fairly fast-firing weapon with low damage in each round. On the topic of fire rate, this weapon already has great status output and critical consistency, so tons of fire rate doesn't really shore up those weaknesses like it might elsewhere, but ammo efficiency is definitely a bit of a weakness, so the ammo refund is quite welcome. But another weakness of the Gurkhata is that recoil, mostly because Wild Frenzy takes up a slot that could be used for stabilizer, and without Wild Frenzy, that mostly solves the recoil problem. Like many weapons of its type, the Gurkhata has significant horizontal recoil, so it's impossible to perfectly control, which means that recoil reduction can be a DPS increase if you're good enough at aiming for headshots. It'll allow some bullets the stability to hit the head where they would have otherwise missed even if you had perfect aim. And in Wild Frenzy's case, the fire rate is so extreme that the concern becomes missed body shots other than just missed headshots. And unless enemies are held in place with some crowd control or right in front of you, it's going to be very hard to get those bullets to hit. One of the weird things about all this is that you'll often be wasting ammo rather than getting refunds, or in the best case, both. So the challenge that Wild Frenzy poses is to harness that greatly increased DPS. It gives you a ton of fire rate, perhaps the largest single DPS increase on paper of any mod in the game, but because you will often miss a lot of the rounds, and then you might even be wasting ammo and then not get a refund, or even if you do get the refund, you may have done less damage overall than you would have with that whole magazine, albeit you'll probably have done that damage faster because the recoil is so hard to manage and those bullets are difficult to hit. It's difficult to hit all of them. This is a mod that doesn't really give you much of a benefit just on its own, but it does theoretically have a lot of power inside of it. And it's really a full package too. It causes a problem, it makes you use ammo more quickly, and then it solves that problem by giving you ammo refunds, or potentially. But you have to actually do that. It doesn't give you more damage if you can't actually hit those bullets, and it doesn't give you ammo back if you can't actually hit those bullets. So, It theoretically is a full package with a very powerful benefit, but it also poses quite a bit of a challenge. I feel like there are basically two ways to solve the problems posed by Wild Frenzy. I feel like you can either control the output somehow, or further magnify the DPS and just go all in on getting the damage out of your bullets really, really fast. So first, let's talk about controlling the output. You could fit in recoil reduction and get back whatever you have to drop from your build elsewhere in your loadout. So base damage, at the time of this recording anyway, is fairly easily replaced. You could run Vigorous Swap. Quite a few Arcanes give you base damage. Shade's Ambush Precept gives you base damage. Chroma's Vex Armor gives you base damage. That kind of stuff. So you could take off your Serration and then run Stabilizer and Wild Frenzy and then just make up the base damage somewhere else. You'd probably get more than you would have gotten from Serration. Or you could find a way to stop yourself from firing the entire burst at once. That likely means forfeiting the ammo refunds most of the time, but you're saving ammo by controlling it, so the resulting weapon playstyle, I guess, more like a playstyle, should be usably efficient. So ways that you might stop yourself from firing more would be a side roll, although, or I guess a backflip or a front flip. But those are going to make it take a little while for you to start shooting again. I think something better would be a very fast casting Warframe power that is nevertheless a two-handed action. So some Warframe powers are a one-handed action. You can do them while shooting or reloading or whatever. So you want a Warframe power that is a two-handed action, and you have to stop everything to do it, but is also very fast. Is performed very quickly. You could use natural talent, etc. And then you could use that power, as long as you can use it on demand, to stop yourself from firing the burst and then very quickly burst again. And you could kind of use it like a weird burst weapon, like multiple panderos instead of one gigantic pandero, which is cool. Fan the hammer multiple times, use the magazine up by fanning the hammer over and over and over again. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that would be tricky, but it's doable, right? Some other ideas off the top of my head. You could control the output by using bullet attractors. So you could use Unairu's first Void Blast mode that creates bullet attractors. You could use Mag's Magnetize or Void status effects. For Mag's Magnetize, there are so many better weapons for that I don't really want to recommend that. But, there are options to make it easier for the bullets to hit. You could use the Scourge's mini bullet attractors, too. Every little bit helps. If only the Scourge wasn't also a primary weapon. You could get a squad mate to bring it with them, I suppose. I don't know. Some options. I guess, finally, you could maybe do something like fire it into Nova's antimatter drop. I don't know. I probably wouldn't go for that because the Gurkhata's output is mostly based on its status output and its crit. The base damage is not really that high, but I don't know. I mean, go figure. You're also not going to get an ammo refund from that. Again, all options. So you could try to control the output. You could try to make the weapon more reliable, not so sprayy, either by making the bullets more accurate at the same time as shooting them really quickly. Again, you could use Stabilizer or a Riven. You could try to stop yourself from shooting the whole burst in various ways, or you could, bullet attractors or whatever. You could just clump the enemies up in a huge ball with like Vauban's Vortex or Nidus's Larva, and then just spray at the ball. I don't love that idea because it's not that good against a group of enemies. Like, I would rather just use a weapon that hits multiple targets, but yeah, it's an option, So the other general direction would be to take full advantage of the spraying and praying. The thing that strikes me here is reload speed. You'd be able to get the damage out of your ammo reserves really, really, really fast. And anytime you get a refund, it would be a huge upside, although you would probably still run out of ammo very quickly. I imagine this playstyle making you nauseous because of all the screen shake, but hey, it would be pretty sick. Maybe go with a frame like Volt, get some reload speed, get all the speed, spray constantly, aim minimally, bring no carriers, stow your ammo plates. You get the idea. I don't really recommend that at all, but you could totally try it. Anyway, the core idea with that approach would be to increase the DPS even further and just ignore the drawbacks. Reload speed would hold you back, and you would want to get some somewhere, ideally, but magazine size might work too. Unfortunately, primary magazine size mods either suck or slow your reload speed down too, but that's definitely a direction you could try. I just think that overall, it is so much damage that it's almost like, who even cares if half of it hits? If you do that much, if you fire that many bullets. I had somebody suggest using heavy caliber, which, like, no, but sure, if you were going to do that, it kind of turns into like an infinite shotgun, like an auto shotgun type of weapon where you just spew pellets all over the place. I don't know. Again, I don't really recommend that, but it sounds pretty fun. So there you go. Huh. All right. Talk about an augment. Wild Frenzy is more of a whole new weapon than most actual new weapons. It's a crazy damage multiplier on paper, again, but it asks you to do a lot. It really wants you to harness that power. I do have a last thought before we go. What do you use the normal auto trigger for when you have this augment equipped? I guess long range targets? Maybe this alt fire, is used best as like a shotgun for only very close range targets, and you're mostly still using the primary fire. I don't know, that sounds kind of boring. I'm not doing that, but I don't know. What a mod, right? That's Wild Frenzy. I've been Zandy, and you've been tuned to the ModCast.